Is this the moment that worlds collide? Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trek to the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We are on Old Dragon's Tale Part 6. I almost edited last week because I thought that it was actually Part 4, but it was Part 5. I may be wrong. Maybe I'm getting the parts all mixed up. Whatever. It's hard to keep track of at this point, but hope you guys are doing well. Thank you guys so much for dropping by for the premiere. Hey, chat. Hope you guys are fantastic. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week after Mushoku Monday ends. Greatly appreciate everybody that drops by for the VOD later on as well. You guys mean a lot to me as well. Just overall, the support has been fantastic. And yes, greatly appreciate everybody that support channel monetary through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships. Last week we had Subver with a super and Soundwave with a super. Thank you guys so much for your support. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But yes, last week, I don't really think I had anything that happened during the editing and whatnot that really jumped out to me besides... Yes, I had a chuckle at some point realizing that, yeah, they mentioned that the whole idea of, you know, this child for the dragon god and Lunaria was like this idea from the human god. So it is, yes, the assumption it being Orsted is kind of funny that the child that was the human god's idea will inevitably, again, assuming this is the same person, eventually be the downfall of the man god. Like, this is a thing that he wanted to happen, and he then screwed up everything, and then later on it's going to come to hunt him down based on, again, what we see from, you know, what Rudius eventually has a vision of, the downfall of the man god. But there's a little bit of irony there. I'm sure that that Refugin was going for that. That was an idea that he wanted to do, that the thing that he was experimenting with was his ultimate downfall. Now, the question mark's going to be, could this potentially be a thing where the man god wanted to use Orsted, and in the end, it slipped out of his hands? Like, he wanted to have this child created, and then he wanted to get the child, and again, everything kind of fell apart right here with them actually showing up, and Lunaria saving the child and protecting the child, that the man god wanted the child for some ends later on, and it slips out of his hands, and then it ultimately comes back to haunt him in the end. We'll see, but anyways, that's pretty much it from last week. Let's just dive into this week's Mushoku Monday, which is Chapter 16, The Wrath of the Dragon God. The search for the culprit had begun. For me, every major incident always started with the hunt of a perpetrator. Well, this was only the second time, though. Now then, someone had infiltrated the dragon world, slipped past the dragon folk's watchful eye, made their way to Lord Dragon God's mansion, and killed Lady Lunaria, and ultimately even tried to kill the young master. Do you think it would be difficult to find them? No, it's much easier than searching for a single demon lurking somewhere in the dragon world. After all, the circumstances were incredibly specific. Unlike the crystal incident, this happened in broad daylight, in the middle of town. On top of that, I had the power of the demon eye. There's no way the evidence wouldn't pile up, and just like that, the proof came together. So easily, so effortlessly. It was almost laughable. It was hard to believe that someone who had slain the most revered person in the dragon world, Lady Lunaria, could have been so careless. It was baffling that they hadn't even tried to cover their tracks at the scene. Even if they had attempted to conceal themselves, the method was so cruel that a little effort was enough to expose it. I didn't even need to use my demon eye. I should have questioned that fact more. But unfortunately, when things go smoothly, people rarely stop to wonder why. He's already piecing... I mean, technically, again, he's telling a story here. He already knows what happens ultimately. But he's kind of pointing out here, it's so easy to find who did it. And I should have realized at the time it was easy for a reason. There was somebody setting things up. Somebody placed this here. Somebody set me up, and I chewed right into it. They put the bait out there, and I just chomped right onto it and just got dragged right in. When you follow the correct steps, success is given. Or so I thought. Now that the evidence was gathered, the list of suspects had narrowed down. Yet, when I saw the final list, I was left speechless. I re-examined the evidence, checked it again and again. It's gonna be the Demon Empress, isn't it? I think I was saying that last week. But no matter how many times I went over it, the list of suspects did not change. And once that investigation was nearly complete, a meeting was called.
So, this is the list of suspects.
The 5 dragon generals gathered in a conference room where Lord Dragon God awaited. Each presented their findings. Each single one of us had arrived at the same conclusion. Yes, we all had the same names on our lists. 4 names were written there. Padoria Doldia, Nartakil, Impondon Ballard, Kirishishu, Karishishu. There it is. I knew she was going to come up. Why is there a Doldia there, though? I'm completely blanking on the other ones, but obviously Doldia is going to be one of the beast folks. I'm guessing they're visiting as well. Again, they were celebrating the birth of the child, and so they were coming to visit, and maybe they came back again at some point. The first 3 names probably don't sound familiar to you, but with that last one, you might have already started to realize something. yes, the one character you keep bringing up specifically and having scenes where it's listing out what they talk about is going to be obviously important at some point. Yes, they were all people from other worlds, and at the same time, they were the engineers I spent years negotiating with and invited to the Dragon World.
They had been gathering at certain buildings for meetings in the days leading up to Lady Lunaria's murder. On the day that she was believed to have been killed, several witnesses saw them behaving suspiciously in town. Moreover, after that day, they vanished without a trace.
What? On the day that she was believed to have been killed? You guys don't know? That wasn't the same day? They don't know when she was killed? Are they not? Does nobody go in and out of that place to see that she was dead? Like, I know they said there was a bloodbath, and I'm assuming a lot of people were killed, like guards and everything, but like, nobody from the outside heard anything. Nobody like visits on a regular basis. Like, it's like insular, and that nothing goes out or in to know that everybody's dead, and everybody was wiped out. What? Like, this is a leader. Like, why would there not be like staff constantly going in and out? Solar's explanation matched my own findings, but I didn't want to believe it. There was no way they would do such a thing. They had come to the Dragon World for its sake. They had come for the sake of peace between worlds, or so I thought. Yet I had nothing to refute the so-called evidence laid out before me. You think Karishishu, being close friends with Lady Lunaria, should be proof of her innocence? Sadly, no. She could be getting close for the sake of taking her down. Or she could change her mind with the threat that their people are in danger. Kill her, or your people die. This is a do-or-die situation. They'll take their own people. She's not that close to Lunaria. No, it's quite the opposite. One could argue that she got close to her precisely because she was planning this incident.
What's wrong, Laplace? You look pale.
As his Lars' words, my wings trembled. If they really were responsible for the crime, then it wouldn't be strange for me to be a suspect as well. They could say that I had planned Lady Lunaria's assassination, that I had brought them to the Dragon World for that very purpose. It's a long plan, but hey, why not? All the man god's plan. Again, this sort of does check with what Laplace said at some point. I think even the last Mushoku Monday. He mentioned back then, it's similar to what we kind of established with the mainline series, is that the man god, and it's a lot to do with, again, fate. The man god sort of has to put a lot of things into effect to build into something. He was talking about it when he was talking about the Demon Empress coming back and all that kind of stuff. This idea that he kind of sets things in motion and then it all builds towards something, and so he sees something coming. He probably has to do the same thing back here. He had to like sort of set things in motion. Put that little dragon demon child over here. Eventually, the Lord Dragon God will come over there and pick him up. He'll bring him in, and then at that point, he'll start to try to establish peace talks, and then I'll work with him to get that trust gained, and then eventually, they'll bring in people that I can use to kill Lady Lunaria. All that stuff. It's all stuff that he has to set in motion. I had no words to deny it. Even if I had no such intentions, the fact remained that I was the one that brought them here. Seeing my distress, Solar spoke.
Laplace, we do not suspect you.
Is it gonna win me over? I never trusted this guy, and now it's gonna win me over. Those words were meant to reassure me. Looking around, I saw the other dragon generals were also looking at me with the same expression as Solar. It was a gaze of reassurance.
You are the one who owes the greatest debt to Lady Lunaria. Your loyalty to Lord Dragon God is unquestionable. There is no way that you would cause this tragedy.
Thank you. Along with relief, I felt a sense of pride. To be treated as a trusted comrade by these noble dragon generals, there was no greater honor.
Most likely, you were used. The culprit must know what you were doing, approached you, and planned to pin the blame on you, while taking the life of Lady Lunaria.
But why would they target Lady Lunaria? More than anything, I wanted to understand the reasoning. Who had done this? For what purpose had they killed Lady Lunaria? Why would they try to kill the young master? I needed to know.
This is just speculation, but those from other worlds likely do not want the Dragon World to grow any stronger, especially since Lord Dragon God married a human goddess and bore a child. They must have seen that as a threat.
It would make sense as them coming over there at that time. And this sort of gives credit to the idea of it being specifically, again, a demon folk that would have executed it, because they could have used a demon eye to see how powerful this child is. And that would cement in their mind, okay, what that guy is whispering me is actually true. I need to stop this. And why would that be a threat?
Don't you see? Humans may be the weakest race, but their cultural development speed is unmatched. Meanwhile, we dragonfolk, though slow in developing culture, are the strongest species in individual strength. If the bond between humans and dragonfolk grows stronger, we could surpass all the other worlds and seize dominance. That's absurd. Are you saying that they think Lord Dragon God and the human god are plotting to rule over all the other worlds? Would it be so strange if someone believed that? Solar's reasoning didn't sit right with me. At the very least, the gods I had encountered only cared about their own worlds. Some had been wary of others due to past conflicts, but none has seriously sought war. But all it takes is somebody whisper in their ear that the other does. And again, that self-preservation kicks in. Us or them. They had to have known such an act would not go unanswered. Yet, I couldn't deny that there was some logic to it. As long as the worlds remained equal, things would be fine. But if a clear disparity rose, this balance would not last. Those at the top might begin to look down on those below, treating them as slaves. And that's the troubling thing, because all it really does take, again, let's putting aside the assumption of who is causing this, but it's simply that somebody gets whispered in the ear that something happens. There is a fear of causing a conflict because the moment they come in here and kill this child and kill Lunaria, suspicion is going to be on them. If it's one of the people on this list that directly did this, again, being manipulated, they're going to cause a threat to their own lives because it's going to be so simple. It's going to be so obvious. You're the only people that come here that would do this. The assumption is that nobody that lives in this world would ever want to touch her. They all love Lord Dragon God. They love Lunaria. Why would you bring suspicion upon your people like that? There's a good chance that Lord Dragon God's going to go right out there and kill everybody. It leads it down to only one individual, the human god, because I see him never ever having a shred of suspicion go upon him. And then he can use the dragon god to kill all the other ones because he doesn't have the strength to do it himself. It does bring up a question mark here, the idea of turning the other ones into slaves. Like the idea of the human god, or at least for his people, to bring the other ones under him and use them. If someone had struck first to prevent that, then perhaps it made sense. Yeah, true too. If they knew a threat was coming. Again, I mentioned that earlier. But if that was their goal, then killing Lady Lunaria was a poor move. It accomplishes nothing. That's true. Which means the real target wasn't Lady Lunaria. Their true objective was likely Young Master. Yeah. Because he's this experimental thing that might be really strong. And it could come down to the idea that, again, the man god was like, hey, I want to try this little thing. Let's try to create this little magical, powerful thing. And then the moment the child's born, wait, I see something I don't want to see. Now he suddenly, again, if he has at this point the ability to see forward in time, he now sees his downfall. This thing is too powerful. I gotta get rid of it. What do you mean? The young master will be the king and ruler of both the dragonfolk and the humans. What? No, rather, the god of the next generation. What? Okay, they're establishing their hierarchy system here. Again, like the idea of how they pass down rulership. That this would go to the bloodline. I mean, I would assume that with the case of the Dragonfolk world, because he's born there, he's of, the lineage of the father. But why would that go over there? You would think that whoever the human god has a child with, if they're going to have another child, then they can pass it on. I'm assuming not a daughter, because the daughter came over here. He would just have another child and have that child rule over that area. Or, like they were mentioning before, pass it down to somebody they feel is powerful enough. It's a very interesting assumption. The title of Son of Lord Dragon God ensured the loyalty and command of the Dragonfolk. The title of Son of Lady Lunaria ensured the loyalty and command of the humans. Did the humans love her that much too? I'm guessing the humans really love Lunaria as well, even though she hasn't been there. I mean, everybody here loves her, so I guess the time that she was over there, they could have loved her too. But I would assume with everybody sort of being at each other's throats, they would see her as being somebody that abandoned them, somebody that betrayed them. There was a possibility of the Dragonfolk and the humans uniting under the young master's command. That was why they sought to kill him. However, Lady Lunaria resisted far more than they expected, and they failed in finishing the job. Of course, the possibility of killing Lady Lunaria was considered from the start. Even if they succeeded in assassinating the young master, it would be meaningless if she bore another child. Again, based on the fact that they have to assume the day of death, why did they not finish the job? It gave me an impression that they had to get the hell out of there. It seems weird. Could be a lost in translation thing. The reason does not matter. The one who interrupted the conversation was Lord Dragon God. After scanning the list in front of him, he fixed his gaze on Szilard with a piercing stare and spoke. Szilard, what is this? Huh? Ah, it's a list of suspects, sir. What exactly did I order you to do? Find the perpetrator? You got a list. What are you doing with this? This doesn't tell me anything. This tells me who you might think. This is a scatter shot. To find the perpetrator. Ah. Szilard realized his mistake. Lord Dragon God had ordered us to find the culprit, not suspects. In other words, we had failed to complete our mission. Under normal circumstances, Lord Dragon God wouldn't have bothered to point out such a minor error. But this time was different. The killing intent emanating from him made it clear. If we didn't bring the culprit before him immediately, He would tear us apart himself. I don't know if we go that far. Let's relax a little bit. My deepest apologies. Szilard immediately bowed in the most formal manner possible. With a resolute expression, he made his declaration to Lord Dragon God. I will set out once across all worlds, find the culprit, and drag him here. Wait. As Szilard was about to dash out of the conference room, Lord Dragon God's sharp gaze stopped him in his tracks. Szilard was trembling. Lord Dragon God had been truly, deeply enraged this whole time. No one could endure his glare head-on and remain unshaken, not even the 5 dragon generals. Szilard, the culprit is on this list, correct? Yes, sir. I believe the probability is high. Lord Dragon God seemed to be deep in thought. Was he contemplating another motive for Lady Lunaria's murder? Or was he considering a method to uncover the culprit? Whatever it was, the answer didn't come immediately. For a while, he simply sat there, his presence radiating a fury, capable of burning everything to ash. His ice-cold gaze scanned the list, as if vowing never to forget the names written there, even in death. Eventually, Lord Dragon God lifted his head, as if something had caught his attention. Had he figured something out? We all turned to look at him expectingly. However, his sharp gaze wasn't on us. He was looking behind us. What do you want? It was only when Lord Dragon God spoke that we realized. A man stood in the room. It's the human god, isn't it? His presence was so faint that it was impossible to tell whether he was truly there or not. The very space around him seemed slightly distorted. Yeah, it's him. it's him. Oh, hey there. One last little nudge. Ooh, what a pretty list you got there. Which one do I want to start a war with? It's interesting that nobody noticed he was there. Again, this is the idea that he just kind of pops in whatever the hell he wants to. It's seemingly something that he had back then, too. Again, they should be on, high alert right now with what happened. The very space around him seemed slightly distorted, as if he always stood in a blind spot. Is it really so strange that I came? His aura was different from the last time we met. Somewhere in it, I sensed anger. And it was only natural. Huh. I wonder if that's real, that he actually is mad that Lunaria is dead. Now, again, this entire time, I'm making assumptions that the man god's going to be the one that breaks everything. I'd be very shocked to actually find out that this old Dragon's Tale actually tells of, sort of why we get to that point where the man god's doing what he's doing, and it's caused by here. Not that this is caused by the man god and ultimately leads to what we see in the mainline series, but that the man god gets betrayed first. The man god gets screwed over first, and this is his fury. I've always had the impression that the man god's always just doing things out of fun. He just wants to have fun, and then he sees his death. Suddenly he sees, I'm going to die, and now I have to make it stop. I have to stop myself from dying while I'm having fun and laughing at people. This could give a viewpoint that he got betrayed first, that somebody stabbed him first. That's what leads him down another route. That'd be cool. That'd be cool. I don't know if I want to get my expectations set there yet. Could he be faking anger, or is he legitimately mad that Lunaria is dead? Again, this was a child that he wanted to have created. Did you really think I would remain silent after my daughter was murdered? That's right. He was the human god, Lady Lunaria's father. You're going to take revenge, aren't you? Please, allow me to join you. We humans may lack strength, but we have wisdom. I beg you, let me help. Is that unacceptable? No. Your assistance will be valuable. Then, show me the list. Without waiting for permission, the human god picked up the list from the table and examined it. He rested his hand on his chin, as if deep in thought. As suspected, these 4 worlds. Do you recognize something? I couldn't help but ask. The human god turned towards me, as if he'd been waiting for that question. Yes, you're aware that these worlds have always been in conflict, correct? Yes. But at some point, they suddenly became eerily quiet. Yes. It was thanks to you, La Paz. Because of your bravery in becoming the bridge between the worlds, paths were opened between them. Hearing his praise, I instinctively puffed out my chest with pride. Individuals that don't want that to happen anymore? Or individuals that are the target of somebody that's doing this whole thing? But his next words shattered that. However, because of that, the research on monsters and teleportation was exposed. At those words, the other dragon generals visibly stiffened. I had no idea what he meant. Every world had been conducting research on monsters and teleportation. I was aware of that much. I even had the opportunity to observe some of the demons' studies firsthand on several occasions. The demons, in particular, focused heavily on monster research, though their research studies were less advanced. Even though they've been thriving, no significant breakthroughs have been made, just a few byproducts. like new forms of magic. To be honest, at the time, I was just ignorant to the extent of the Dragon World's research. I had assumed it was on a similar level. I had occasionally heard reports about progress, but I had no idea what it actually entailed. Now that I think about it, those reports must have been deliberately concealed to some extent. Well, I'll get to that later. At this moment, I was still in the dark. I guess the idea here is they don't like the idea that it seems like the dragon, they're having to share. They don't like the idea they have to share. They were advancing it in their own way, and now they're having to share. Because he's even bringing up right here that, the Dragon World was behind. They must have been in shock, he continued. The dragon folk, who were believed to rely solely on brute force, had acquired such advanced technology. They may have started to suspect the dragon folk were the masterminds behind the monsters and the teleportation incidents. What exactly are you talking about? No one answered my question, but Lord Dragon God and the other dragon generals all bore grim expressions, as if they just received an answer they wished they hadn't. Why was Lunaria killed? Lunaria must have learned that truth about the thing they had discovered. At the same time, they found out that she knew. She had learned their secret, and they had realized it. Given what that would mean for their future, it wouldn't be surprising if they decided to silence her. At the time, I didn't understand what they were talking about. Of course, I never once suspected Lord Dragon God and the 5 dragon generals were actually behind the monsters and the teleportation. But still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Is he suspecting us? Is that what the direction they're going? Because they kind of lost me a little bit right here, and I'm like, wait. I see. So those bastards spied on our research, assuming that we were responsible for the monsters and teleportation based on our progress, and even went so far as to kill Lunaria and try to take the life of my child as well. Okay, so it was like for a brief moment, I was like, wait, are they actually saying that they did this? No, he's saying that they spied on us, and they're saying that we got this far, and they're just assuming that we did it. And again, that goes to what essentially they were talking about when Kadashishu, I forget what her name is, Kishishu, whatever, the Demon Empress. When she got there, she said that she was really surprised how much they can stick on something and advance it. Like, they're not great, and they have, like, all the knowledge, but once they figure something out, they just kind of just swarm on it, and they build on it. Again, that was like that whole indication that we get with them, the dragon folk in general. They get on something, they just build into it like crazy. Like they just hyper fixate and build on it. Her coming in there and seeing that they do this so well, she'll see that and go, wow, I get why they're figuring this stuff out. They're good at this thing. But somebody on the outside looking in, they'll go, holy crap, they're this advanced? They must have been behind all this stuff. Now the suspicion goes on them. Even though the whole point of this whole thing was to share research. Lord Dragon God spoke quietly, but his voice chilled the entire room. Those were terrifying words. It was as if his fury was seeping from his very mouth. Don't fuck with me. With those final words, Lord Dragon God stood up. He squared his shoulders and walked towards the exit. Where are you going? I'm starting from the top. No one understood the meaning of those words. Not me, not Soulard, not Dola, not Maxwell, not Chaos. None of us understood. The state Lord Dragon God was in. He's going to go down the list and kill each one of them, or at least confront them and force them to say something. This is the same Lord Dragon God who had advocated for peace even after the demons had killed Crystal. The same Lord Dragon God who had remained humble even in the meetings of the gods. Everyone believed that, despite his waves of rage. He must have been contemplating the future with profound foresight. I kind of like sort of what Refugian's doing specifically with Lord Dragon God. I mean, it could be the same thing with the other individuals, this idea of each of the gods are all created from this fragments of the creator god, and they don't have like typical human emotions like, pride and desires and fears and, love and all that kind of stuff. But then as they experience that with individuals that are within their worlds, specifically with Lord Dragon God, with Lunaria, he suddenly now has like all these, emotions that would affect him, not being completely neutral and above things like this, hatred and whatnot. It's kind of interesting. It's almost like the idea of a god being corrupted, a god being brought to the level of humans and thus have all these, sinful desires and thoughts and actions. They're partaking the fruit of knowledge. Perhaps if someone had stopped him at that moment, the future would have taken a different course. But that was impossible. To us, the 5 dragon generals, Lord Dragon God's words and actions were absolute. Do you understand what absolute means? I mean, there's also the aspect of how you're going to stop him. I mean, yeah, words could possibly get across to him, but it meant that every word, every action Lord Dragon God made was correct. It had always been that way. Lord Dragon God had never made a mistake. Everything he did was for the future of the Dragon World. Always the right course of action. So it was no surprise that none of the others noticed. But I should have. I was the closest to Lord Dragon God, yet also the one who had spent the least time by his side. I should have realized that even Lord Dragon God, in his anger, could lose his ability to judge things rationally. Chapter 17, The Day the World Ended. Holy what a title. What a title to scroll down to. The Day the World Ended. Here we go. Go down the list. Blow up each one of them until we find out who did it. Is that how this all ends? Is literally he just goes around and blows up everything until he finds the one he wanted? Ah, crap, they're all dead. I guess I got him. I probably got him because I destroyed all of them. The Beast World, a place where an enormous forest stretches endlessly, and mountain ranges rise in succession. A world inhabited by people who resemble various animals. Into this world, Lord Dragon God descended with the 5 dragon generals. He took everybody. I think they implied that before, too. Oh. When we arrived in the Beast World, we were greeted by an army of over 10,000 warriors. The Beastfolk warriors were surrounding the shrine at the mountain's peak. Their piercing and shining eyes were visible from within the forest as they had been waiting for us. At that time, we didn't fully understand what it meant. Why had they gathered around the mountain? Why did they look at us with such murderous intent? Somebody told them already. They were already told. We didn't even think to question it. Or they got to the same conclusion. We were over there, and they're probably going to suspect us. We didn't even question it. We were dragonfolk, a race of warriors. All we could do was accept the hostility and killing intent directed at us. These creatures were our enemy. They had killed Lady Lunaria. Okay, I guess we got the conclusion. That was why they had gathered like this, to confront us as we came for revenge. I guess that's the assumption that they're going to come to. Perhaps if we had looked closer, we would have noticed the expressions of shock on the face of the Beastfolk, a look of astonishment, as if an unexpected foe had arrived. But at the time, such a detail was nothing more than a fleeting sense of unease.
Bring out the one who killed Lunaria.
Lord Dragon God's voice rang out over the stunned Beastfolk. It was a voice filled with rage, a voice so terrifying that even we, the 5 dragon generals, trembled. It echoed across the entire Beast World. Jeez, dude. All the Beastfolk shuddered. They had just realized that they had drawn the gaze of a great, powerful, and absolute opponent.
I don't know.
Yet there was one amongst them who did not waver before Lord Dragon God's voice. Someone equal in status to Lord Dragon God. Yes, the Beast God. His appearance had changed since the last time we saw him. He was still a twin-headed beast, but he was no longer mounted on a white wolf. He stood on his own 2 feet. At the council meetings, he had always been seated atop a white wolf.
Podoria.
The Beast God furrowed his brows at the name.
Podoria is with your people. He disappeared.
Then I don't know.
Are you hiding him?
Are you making baseless accusations?
If you won't hand him over, I'll crush this entire world.
If you think you can, then try it. That's not it's not a really good way to negotiate. This is what it meant to have a conversation go nowhere. Looking back, how we talk more calmly here, perhaps battle would have been avoided, but neither the Lord Dragon God nor the Beast God sought diplomacy at the moment. They had only one thought, to find and kill their enemy.
Fine then.
Lord Dragon God spread his wings. The Beast God bared his fangs. They took their stances. The battle began. Jeez, dude. I mean, it feels like, holy crap, are we like escalating a little bit too fast here? But again, this has been brewing. This has been brewing for a long time. This is just one of those moments where finally it's like, okay, finally they're here. And that's what all the Beast Folk are saying. They're finally here. Here it comes. They could be seeing that they're just looking for an excuse to start this whole thing. It's the sad reality. Again, for a long time now, seemingly hundreds of thousands of years, tens of thousands of years at least, it's been going on for a while now where essentially all these different sides are having these incidents of teleportation and monsters, and they're all thinking that it's the fault of the others. And they're pointing their fingers because it's affecting their worlds, and they're afraid of some sort of invasion or attack or something like that. But the entire time, 2 people are stopping this, the human god and the dragon god. And now that this has kind of fallen apart because of this incident, and again, probably orchestrated for that reason, suddenly the last thing that's keeping this from happening is now angry. And it all falls apart. Now suddenly every side is going to be going, I knew it, they were coming for us. See? Exactly what I thought. And they're already ready to go. They're already ready to go. They've been waiting for this. All of these sides have been waiting for this moment. So of course it's going to go south real quick. Of course the other side's not going to listen. For 3 days and 3 nights, the 5 dragon generals and the Beast Folk's army clashed. But could it even be called a battle? Lord Dragon God fought the Beast God in a one-on-one duel, while we, the 5 Dragon Generals, wiped out anything that tried to interfere. The Beast Folk is a mighty race. They have a sharp sense of smell, eyes that can see clearly at night, and can move at full speed across the roughest terrain. And they yield magic using their voices. Their magic could shake an enemy's eardrums, sometimes killing them outright. Okay, that's a little bit more than the bark that stuns people. Apparently back there, they were a little bit more advanced with the barking magic. Over here, like, I guess over time, they lost a lot of that art. I mean, it could still be there, it's just that, you know, nobody really knows it. But, like, yeah, the current time in the mainline series, all they have is the ability to paralyze, not literally kill somebody just by barking. That's crazy. But they were no match for us, the 5 Dragon Generals. Our bodies could not be pierced by their claws, fangs, or weapons, and their voice-based magic was repelled. When we struck the grounds, mountains shattered. When we swung our claws, forests were torn apart. With a single blow, hundreds of beast folk were sent flying, killed instantly. It was a massacre. Holy crap, the power level difference, dude. That's insane. The creator god made them OP. 5 dragon folks slaughtered hundreds of thousands of beast folk. Perhaps if they had greater numbers and collective strength to match us, they could have fought back. But not a single beast warrior managed to leave a scratch on us. The gap in power was overwhelming. Even amongst beast folk, there were warriors that were considered escorts of their god, like us, the 5 dragon generals. But they were no match. As we wiped out the beast folk, Lord Dragon God and the beast god fought. As a species, Lord Dragon God's power was far greater, but as gods, they were equals. Very interesting. And this makes sense, sort of, because, again, the humans are, like, super weak, seemingly, compared to, again, a dragon folk. So it makes sense that there's, like, this inequality here, but that it wouldn't be here. You assume, again, because he was talking about before, the human god's going to be strong. The beast god did not fall behind. Their speed was beyond comprehension, making it impossible to describe their battle in detail. The sheer velocity of their movements created constant shockwaves, generating wind that gave rise to multiple tornadoes. These tornadoes tore through the blood-drenched lands, sucking up everything in their path, showering the beastfolk world with fallen trees and a rain of blood. Jeez, dude. The beast god's primary weapons were his fangs and claws. With an earth-shaking roar, he lunged at Lord Dragon God with lightning speed, but his fangs could not pierce Lord Dragon God's scales. Lord Dragon God, too, fought with claws and fangs. He countered, slashing with his paws and pummeling with his fists. But he could not tear through the beast god's fur to damage his flesh. Neither side could land a decisive blow, yet the damage was slowly accumulating. On the morning of the 4th day, the battle was decided. For a battle between gods, the conclusion came swiftly. When I saw them, the beast god, his jaws locked on Lord Dragon God's shoulder. His fangs had pierced Lord Dragon God's scales, and blood gushed forward. Probably a severed head. It's chomping on him. At last, the beast god had landed a decisive blow, but that very attack was exactly what Lord Dragon God had been waiting for. Lord Dragon God seized the beast god's right and left heads as they bit down on him. Cloaking his whole body in his dragon aura, he pulled them apart, one to the left, one to the right. He tore them apart, tearing him cleanly in half. Lord Dragon God slammed the beast god, now cut in half, into the ground. There was a tremendous impact and a blinding flash. I'm so curious what's going to happen next, because again, they go around and destroy the worlds. My assumption here is that the moment that the gods are destroyed, the world collapses. And again, it could be an idea that because they're not present, chaos is created, or potentially just like the laws of the world itself start to crumble. Mana fluctuates improperly, winds, storms, eruptions. A surge of overwhelming energy swept across the beast world. I was blown away. Not just me. Every single one of the 5 dragon generals was sent flying. I was blown away through the air and slammed into the ground, but I immediately sprang to my feet and took to the sky. What I saw was a massive crater. I'm assuming it's like energy from the body. Like he killed a god and just slams it down and the body itself explodes. Or did the dragon god create this energy? I'm going to think again it's like a release of energy because the god itself died. Lord Dragon God slowly emerged from it, spreading his wings. He ascended to the air. Then he let out a roar that echoed across the entire world. A roar of unspeakable fury. Grah! That day, fear and hatred towards dragonfolk was seared into the hearts of every living being in the beast world. That's sort of an interesting statement. Yeah, the assumption here is that the moment he does this,
the beast folks hate him. I mean, it's going to probably happen for a lot of the other places because, again, he's going to go around and kill a bunch. But it's interesting that I don't recall ever hearing, that's in general too. I don't recall really hearing many stories of any other side that they hate dragonfolk. Like, specifically, they don't like the dragonfolk. Like, no side says the dragonfolks did this. And again, that could be a lot to do with the fact that they just don't really remember much of the history. Lord Dragon God went on a rampage. He rampaged and rampaged and rampaged until nothing was left.
If you refuse to come out, then I'll destroy the entire world.
Those words were not an empty threat. 90% of the beast world was reduced to ruins, and its collapse had begun. There it is. There's the start right there. It's collapsing. But again, is it because the god's gone, or is it because he's literally just physically destroying it? Nearly all living creatures in the beastfolk world perished. With the destruction of this magnitude, Padoria could not have survived. The level of devastation left no room for doubt.
Laplace, I leave the rest to you.
Perhaps satisfied with his sight of the disintegrating beast world, Lord Dragon God returned to the dragon world. What? What? Okay, question here. Again, because they specified previously in the mainline series, but in the mainline series, it specifies that, like, when he goes to these worlds and starts destroying them, they will flee to the other worlds. So how do they get there? Like, how are they going to transfer? Because, again, their way out is dead. They established the gods themselves have to use their energy to move them. Unless in its collapse, they're able to traverse. Like, there's going to be, like, an opening that happens. Question mark? Or these sides have secretly already had abilities to transport. That's a question mark. Because, again, there's so much of this lore has established that the gods themselves have to move people. That they have to go to the altar and open that door. But this is ruthless, though. Goes there, destroys everything. Is like, all right, I'm good. I'm going to the next one. I'm going to go back home. I'm just going to go back home. Peace out. Unless the idea here is that he's established they're not here, which is kind of unfortunate. I just kill everybody here. They were telling the truth. Whatever. Back to the dragon world. See if I can find them there. Before leaving, he handed me a single gemstone. A bloodstained gemstone. The moment I held it, I understood. It was a divine gemstone imbued with the power of a god. With it, crossing the boundary was possible. This is the keys. They're finally getting into the keys. They're finally getting into the keys. So it is a physical thing. And it's from the gods themselves. I don't know if they ever mentioned that before. I don't think that was ever mentioned before. Again, because my question mark has always been, like, what is this thing that he has to get from the generals? Like, he has to take them down. Why? Is it because they're being alive? My assumption at the time was that them being alive is not allowed. Like, they have to die in order for that seal to be open. But this is saying they specifically have a key. It's a gem. And it's a gem from these gods. So it makes sense why they have as many as they have, because obviously one for each side of the worlds. For now, let's call it a god gem. It was likely extracted when Lord Dragon God killed the beast god. Yep. Holding the gem, I was bewildered. He left me in charge and told me to see things through. But what exactly was I supposed to do? The survivors fled desperately, searching for safety. Was he going to save them? But with the world itself on the verge of collapse, where could they possibly go? It was nothing but a pitiful sight. As a result of Lord Dragon God's rampage, the beast world was doomed. Was I meant to hunt down the remaining survivors? No, I was given no such order. I can clearly sense the emotions of the fleeing beast folk. They did not want to die. They wanted to survive. Yet the world was crumbling with every passing moment. Even without my intervention, their extinction was inevitable. They would be swallowed by the collapsing world. All I could do was watch them flee, unable to act. And in my heart, a question lingered. Was this level of destruction truly necessary? Did everything have to be obliterated? The moment the beast god fell, the battle was decided. He never did figure out where Padoria disappeared to. But was this massacre really the only option? Was there no other way? Not all beastfolk were guilty. I desperately tried to push that thought aside. Lord Dragon God must have had a reason. There had to be some deeper meaning behind it. At least, that's what I thought. It's like, even to this moment, he's trying to at least give some sort of, like, logic to what Lord Dragon God's doing. Again, that's because nobody questions him. He's always right. He's always clear-minded. He never makes rash decisions. He never does something out of play. He always does the right thing. He wants peace. But now that he's now, again, like I said earlier, he's a god that has now experienced anger and these emotions that are now corrupting him. He now has irrational thought. He is now doing things irrationally. It is sort of interesting to give Laplace this role because, again, Laplace is always falling around. He gives everything to Lord Dragon God. Lord Dragon God gave him a place to stay, gave him a home, gave him purpose, gave him everything, helped him survive, saved his life. And now he's sitting here at the wake of the destruction of this irrational decision that his Lord has made. And now he's going, okay, do I clean up? Do I do more destruction? Like, does he give me this to me so I can use the power to destroy the rest of it? Like, he just did this. What do we do? Even doubting him felt like a sin. Yeah. Good grief. I had to look down to see who it was. I kind of assumed it was going to be him because I can't see anybody else in this situation saying good grief. Like, maybe Maxwell. Maybe Maxwell. Okay. Good grief. And then someone spoke to me. At some point, he had appeared behind me. I had no idea when he arrived or how he got so close. When I turned, I saw a god whose face refused to stay in my memory. Yes, it was the human god. How tragic. As if peering directly into my heart, he spoke. No, perhaps he really had seen through me. Even now, his powers remained a mystery. Even if there was suspicion that they killed Anaria, that doesn't mean all of them were guilty. Are we getting the human god more like logic here than the dragon god right now? Wow, that was a bit much. Oh, chill, dude. I'm sure most of them probably didn't know what was happening. By the time they realized it, their god was dead. By the time they understood, their world was ending. All they have is despair. They did nothing. They understood nothing. Standing behind me, gazing at the fleeing beastfolk, the human god whispered those words. A whispering? Sorry, I can't really do a whisper with him very well. I had to project it out a little bit. For a moment, I thought he was condemning me for simply watching, for failing to stop this tragedy. But no, it was something else. After a brief silence, he muttered, "Still, this is far too cruel." When I turned to face him, the human god gave me a slow, gentle, and knowing smile. "Don't tell the dragon god, all right?" With those parting words, the human god vanished before my eyes. What was he planning? Where had he gone? I wasn't sure. But soon I know something. The fleeing people were all moving in the same direction. A single, unified direction. The direction Lord Dragon God had disappeared to. Were they seeking revenge on him? But Lord Dragon God had long since returned to the Dragon World. They couldn't cross the boundary. And yet, they were heading there, to the place we had come from, to the shrine that allowed them to cross the world boundary. And one by one, they vanished into it, into the shrine that only the gods would have been able to use. Well, with the god gem, I could have used it too. Regardless, the human god made his move. Yeah. God, I want to know now. Like, again, I kind of it's hard not to lean into it too much. Like, I want to lean in so much to like the deceptive, like manipulative human god. And again, it's partly the fact of back there, Laplace wished that he had stopped him back there, but he's like, but he'd get away really easily. But I kind of wish I can go back there. Like, he wanted to go back to that first meeting and stopped him. I want to lean so much into this manipulative human god, but I do kind of want to see if there is a break point for him. Like, he wasn't always a bad person. He wasn't always manipulative. That something broke at some point. Here, is he legitimately trying to help the fleeing people? Like, he feels bad for the beast folk and he wants to save these people? Or is he just trying to get them to go somewhere so they can play with them more? Yeah, it's not their fault. Let's get them over here. I can use them later. I can mess with them later. I want to make this cool little pot of all of them together so I can mess with them. I want to bring them all to my world so I can mess with them there. I don't know. By transferring them from their collapsing world to his own, the human world. Yeah, he's already moving them. So that answers that question. How did they get there? How did he save these individuals? There you go. So, technically,
We can all praise the human god for saving Roxy and all them later on. The only reason that we have Roxy and all them later on is because the human god moved him. Though he's the cause of a lot of it happening in the first place. Perhaps Lord Dragon God intended to annihilate the entire Beastfolk race. As one of the 5 dragon generals, maybe I should have followed suit. Perhaps I should have condemned the actions of the human god. But I couldn't. For me, it was enough that Lady Lunaria's death was avenged. I never intended to destroy the beast world to this extent. So I simply stood by and watched as the human god carried out his actions until the very moment the last of the Beastfolk was transferred to the human world. To be honest, at the time, I was even moved how merciful this god was. Even though his own world was already burdened, he still extended his compassion to the Beastfolk. Even though it was possible that the Beastfolk had deliberately planned Lady Lunaria's assassination, I don't intend to speak ill of Lord Dragon God. I too felt deep sorrow and anger over her death. By the time, I would have liked him to show a measure of generosity and mercy. Of course, I had no intention of making such demands of Lord Dragon God directly. Even now, when I reflect on Lord Dragon God's state of mind back then, I can see that, to some extent, his actions were inevitable. No. I mean, I get the anger, but yeah, there's no like, this is okay. There's nothing okay about this. You're literally like killing millions of innocents over the actions of potentially a small group. Still, I wish he granted the Beastfolk even a sliver of salvation. I had developed a small attachment to them, having engaged in minor exchanges and trade of engineers and dragon warriors, and that's why I just wanted a little mercy for them. That's interesting, this little time that Laplace has spent with these individuals, and how much compassion he has for them, versus Lord Dragon God right now, who's, again, spent many, many thousands of years visiting these people on a regular basis, and doesn't have much compassion for them. But again, he's leaving and saying, handle the rest. He could have the intent of him doing that. He's just so in his own mind at the moment, he doesn't directly say what he needs him to do. But again, he could have wanted Laplace to finish them off. And yet, it was not Lord Dragon God who granted them that mercy. It was the human god. Seeing him act, I believe, without the slightest doubt, that he was the god truly worthy of trust. Never realizing it was all part of his scheme. Okay, so right here it's establishing that he knows that this is all in development. This isn't at some point he breaks. This is all being developed. I mean I can assume it before, but it's saying scheme right here implies the solidification that this is all building up to something. This wasn't the man god at some point got betrayed and that's why he does everything. He was doing all this. But again, what's the trigger? The question is, what's the trigger? Regardless, thus the Beastfolk world was destroyed. The few remaining Beastfolk were accepted into the human world. Only a few % survived. Yet even that accounted for a significant portion of global population. I didn't know the exact number, but it was far from insignificant. Even so, the human god took them in as refugees. Conversely, over 90% of the Beastfolk had perished. Yeah, I can see that. Including the Beast God. It was the greatest catastrophe in the history of the 6 worlds. And yet, that catastrophe was nothing more than a prologue to the horrors that followed. Yeah. Chapter 18. The research on teleportation. We're going to take a little break here? Are we just going to accept that was it? Lord Dragon God went from world to world, destroying them. Okay, never mind. I'm like, wait, are we going to take a break? Nope. He just went around and destroyed them all. Lord Dragon God went from world to world, destroying them one after another. The sea world, the sky world, both of them were crushed without hesitation. The destruction of the beast world had already stirred a strong sentiment across the other worlds. The dragon world must not be forgiven. At the time, I had no way of knowing, but they, too, had their own reasons to fight. And there was no reason not to fight. By the time we arrived, both the sea and the sky worlds had already assembled their armies, waiting for us. The sea folk had gathered a force so vast it darkened the sea pitch black. The sky folk had amassed a force so great it blotted out the sun. But to us, the 5 dragon generals, such forces meant nothing. The battles were a repeat of the one with the beast folk. We, the 5 dragon generals, swept away the resistance. Lord Dragon God annihilated their gods, vented his fury upon the worlds, and their worlds collapsed. The few survivors were taken in by the human god, finding refuge in the human world. Victory after victory. See, this feels kind of dumb at this point. I mean, it doesn't feel dumb. It's just like, this is where, like, the dragon god suddenly becomes lost. Like, again, he's angry. He's got his fury. But it doesn't seem like there's a purpose to what he's doing. He's just going there and just destroying.
And then everybody's just running away off to the human world. Now, again, he might not know that the human god has taken the refugees. He told Laplace, don't tell him anything. Dragon God could be assuming, I got them all. Their world's collapsing, go back home. But either way, it's like, there's no purpose to any of this besides just destroying the entire world. I don't get answers, destroy everything. There's not like I took out the culprit. No, I'm just going to destroy everything. That way, I get the culprit somewhere in there. Victory after victory. But that didn't mean we were unscathed. The endless battles had worn down our bodies and diminished our strength. Especially Lord Dragon God. His body was in shambles. The bite wounds from the beast god still bled. The poison from the sea god continued to eat away at his legs. The aura blast from the sky god had plunged one of his eyes into darkness. The dragon folk were the strongest species. There was no doubt about that. But the 6 gods were equal in power. Even if we, their descendants, had slight difference in growth, the gods themselves were equal from birth. The 5 dragon generals were covered in wounds, but not to the point of being unable to fight. After all, there was still more worlds left. Yes, the world inhabited by a race, said to be equal in power to the dragon folk. The demon world. Yep. Get the dragon god all worn down to the point that now they can finish them off. I hesitated. If we fought the demon world, we wouldn't emerge unscathed. This time, one of the 5 dragon generals might fall. Perhaps even Lord Dragon God himself would perish. Was it right to continue fighting like this? Did the demon world need to be destroyed as well? Should we really fight them? It wasn't like I had a particular fondness to the demon world. If anything, I could even say I despised it. The world had rejected me after all. But having witnessed the destruction of the beast world, the sea world, the sky world, I had begun to feel a strong sense of aversion. Was this really necessary? I'm now starting to see that. What's the end game here? Hey, boss, what's the end game here? Are we still trying to find the killer of Lunaria? Did we miss the plot at some point? A world collapsing, people fleeing in terror, their faces twisted in despair. If we lost, the same fate awaited the dragon world. Yeah, that too. No, perhaps something even worse. The dragon folk would scatter, trying to escape the crumbling world. But would there be any world willing to take them? The human world? The human god. Perhaps he would try to accept the dragon folk. That didn't really occur to me before, yeah. There's not really many dragon folk in the human world, right? It's just like the dragon generals. Got a sense that the human god didn't really accept any of them. And again, it kind of implies they used some sort of reincarnation. That god had been supporting us, the dragon folk. The humans were essentially our ally. Even if we lost, they would likely protect and aid the survivors. But the human world already housed the 3 races we had destroyed. I had heard that they had been given land. Their numbers had grown, and they begun to establish their own territories. They would never forget suffering, the pain, and the humiliation that they had endured. If dragonfolk refugees fled to the human world, it was clear what would happen. They would be wiped out. Of course, I had no intention of losing. I would not let the dragon world suffer such a fate. But our enemy was the demons. There was a chance we could lose. I was torn. Should I stop Lord Dragon God or not? Honestly, I wanted Lord Dragon God to calm down, for the human god to intervene and mediate a peace. After all, we hadn't even identified Lady Lunaria's true murderer yet. Again, at some point, the plot was lost. At some point, rage took over and the plot was lost. We forgot the reason we were doing this. Shouldn't we settle down and investigate it first? Wouldn't it be best to stop all this? Is that what you think? Yes, I thought the same. That's what I should have done. But at the time, I truly blindly worshipped Lord Dragon God. And that's the difficulty there. You put him on a pedestal too much, and at this point, you can't really distinguish that he's doing something wrong. Of course, I still revere him now. But back then, I couldn't even conceive of the idea he might be wrong. And there was also my position as one of the 5 dragon generals. We were expected to be the most loyal to Lord Dragon God. We had to affirm his every decision. For one of the 5 dragon generals to question Lord Dragon God's actions, such a thing was unspeakable. That's what I believed. And so, I hesitated. As I watched Lord Dragon God and the dragon generals prepare for the next battle, I hesitated. I couldn't talk to anyone about it. Who could I even confide in? Hey there! If Lady Lunaria had been alive, maybe she would have given me some wisdom. She was the only one in the dragon world who could voice her opinions to Lord Dragon God. If she had lived, maybe this war never would have happened. I mean, this is the trigger for it. And yet her death was a trigger for the war in the first place, yeah. But she was gone now. I was cornered on all sides. I wrestled with my doubts, seeking solace in Saliak's company. But there was one person who noticed my inner turmoil, Lady Dola. Oh, I forgot about Dola. Yeah, that's right, Dola. Interesting. I thought I was gonna be the man god. One day, she invited me to her home. Thinking back, it was the first time I had ever set foot inside her house.
Her home was shockingly modest for one of the 5 dragon generals. She had only a handful of attendants, and only the bare essentials in terms of possessions. Seeing those attendants, it made me feel strangely sorrowful. I almost forgot about them under the cover of Lady Lunaria's death, but her attendants were also killed. That finally hitting him is interesting. In the deepest part of the house, there was the still young Pedagogus. He was at the age where he could barely open his eyes. No claws, no fangs, his scales sparse, and the wings on his back still small. That frail appearance stirred a strong sense of protectiveness in me. I don't think he had even developed self-awareness yet. As I looked at Pedagogus, Lady Dola spoke to me. You seem to have something on your mind. Her voice was gentle. Sorry, voice gentle. That's my gentle voice for her. She was in no way trying to interrogate me. There was a softness to it, as if trying to console me. For just a moment, the relationship of teacher and student from the past returned. Aww. I nearly burst into tears. Since being chosen as one of the 5 dragon journals, I had hardly spoken to Lady Dola, but she had always been watching over me. This truly is... Before I realized it, I had poured out everything in my heart. I was prepared to be accused of disrespectful and punished on the spot. Lady Dola listened quietly. No matter how much I raised my voice, she hadn't changed her expression, and after hearing me out, she spoke in a calm tone. It is understandable that you do not comprehend Lord Dragon God's will. It was not a dismissive remark. Rather, it sounded as though she regretted something. Come, I have something to show you. With those words, Lady Dola stood up and left the house. I followed her without question. She continued walking in silence, moving outside the town. I didn't ask where we're going, and simply followed her. After about an hour, Lady Dola, who had been flying the whole time, landed on a mountain. It was an ordinary, nameless mountain. She folded her wings and finally spoke. This is the place. What is this place? I asked, sounding like a fool. It was just a mountain to me. Lady Dola must have realized that simply landing here wouldn't make it obvious. Without answering my question, she walked straight into a certain rock. Then placing her hand on the rock, she began an incantation in a low voice. When the incantation ended, the rock silently vanished. Where that rock had been, a cave entrance had appeared, just big enough for a person to pass through. A hidden passage. Without a word, Lady Dola stepped inside, and I followed. Well, this gets into the ability to hide objects. Or at least seeing this was present back then, the ability to hide things. The cave led into a narrow tunnel. Though dimly lit, it was clear the passage had been well maintained. At the end of the tunnel, there was a room. It had been expanding from the original cave, but the ceiling was low, making it unsuitable for flying. Still, it was about the size of a house. Inside, desks were lined up, and on top of them were various pieces of equipment and stacks of paper, and many dragonfolks were present. Some sat at desks, others sat on the floor, while some stood and worked. Everyone was focused on their task. What is this place? This is the Teleportation Research Facility. Teleportation? I had known the Dragon World was researching teleportation magic. Yeah, they were talking about the idea of, was it crystal? But I had no idea how or to what extent, and I was one of the 5 dragon generals. Once you understand this place, your concerns will be eased. With those words, Lady Dola started walking through the room. Everyone here is a researcher. Well, I voiced my admiration as I observed them, and then noticed something. Every single one of them had faded scales. Many had no wing membranes, and some had lost their fangs. Yes, to my surprise, they were all elderly. I was about to say it's going to be like the throwaways, the ones that couldn't fly that they were talking about before. If you can't fly, you're kind of given like these different tasks and kind of outcasts. They're all old, aren't they? Yes. Only dragon warriors nearing the end of their lifespans gather here. I didn't ask why at the time, but I had a vague idea. Teleportation magic is dangerous. A single failed experiment could wipe out an entire mountain. So those who had little time left took on the research. Of course, there was likely other reasons. Perhaps older individuals, being calmer than young, hot-blooded warriors, were simply better suited for research. In fact, similar things happened in other worlds. In the demon world, for example, long-lived races were generally not very intelligent, so research was often left to short-lived races. That is sort of interesting. I mean, they do sort of give that indication with me. I mean, it's more the fact that we see individuals like Body Gotti and stuff like that, and they're all kind of really stupid. And then you have like individuals like Roxy and how smart they are. It sort of kind of gives that element of like lifespan and how the longer time, the more you neglect things, or time is just a little bit weird or whatever. Everyone, thank you for your hard work. Today, one of the 5 dragon generals, the Demon Dragon King Laplace, is here for inspection. No need to be nervous. Just continue your research as usual. At Lady Dola's declaration, everyone stood at attention and gave me a powerful salute. Despite their age, they were still dragon warriors.
Welcome, young one. Apologies for the lack of courtesy, but please take your time.
I will do just that. After some hesitation, I responded formally. I was one of the 5 dragon generals, but these people had served Lord Dragon God since before I was even born. They deserve my respect. Come, I'll show you around. I followed Lady Dola as she guided me through the facility. I'm kind of wondering when we're to get to the point here. The assumption here is that, yes, they have always been looking into this, just like everybody else. And thus, it's going to turn to one of those things where, like, everything is justified. And I kind of assume there's going to be an aspect here where the human god wanted this. The human god wanted to get rid of the dragon god and his people. And he orchestrated this for everybody to come together to destroy him because he couldn't do it alone. And it all stems from this fact that he was already developing this stuff. Everybody's suspicions was true. I followed Lady Dola, and she guided me through the facility. She gave me a simple explanation of the research being conducted, but to be honest, at the time, I had no idea what they were doing. Now, I'm well versed on magic, but back then, I didn't even know the basics. The elderly researchers were developing what could now be called magic circles, but to me, they looked like nothing more than strange scribbles. Still, I tried memorizing the patterns. It was just a habit. Whenever I saw something new, I memorized it. That's how I lived since coming to the Dragon World. I was curious about what they were doing. If I understood their goal, I believed that one day I too would be able to reproduce it. I looked through the vast amount of past research material, trying to catch up to them. Well, I didn't get anywhere. What they were doing wasn't something a beginner could understand just by glancing at it.
You don't get it, do you?
No.
I thought so. If you could understand it in a few minutes, it would render thousands of years of research they made as meaningless.
Looking back now, that place was a nest of out-of-place artifacts. The main focus of the research there was on manipulating space, especially things like teleportation and summoning. Again, they've been doing this for a while. Now, they could have been doing it, again, after everything kind of unfolded. Doubt it, though. The great magic of early days felt more like actual magic than mere magical techniques. Even now, there's still many things I can't comprehend. However, some of it had already been researched to a practical level. It was a mountain of wisdom inscribed on dragon hide parchments. If even a single bundle of that had survived, the current magic system would have been drastically different. Again, once they get set on something, they dig into it like crazy. Again, that's what they kind of imply with a lot of these dragon folk. I mean, technically right now, at the current time of this story, Laplace is doing that. He's just researching and putting stuff into books constantly. That is, if there had been one person capable of understanding it. After that, Lady Dola demonstrated summoning magic. What? What? It was an ancient form of summoning magic. Ancient, but not all that different from what we have now. What? A technique to call forth living beings from another world. What she summoned was a small fish that inhabited the sea world. A powerless, ordinary fish. The sea world had already collapsed and was no longer habitable for people, but small creatures like this still seemed to exist. What? Like, there's too many there's too many WTF moments right here. She's like, hold on a second, let's go here, let me show you how we do summoning over here. We're just gonna summon someone real quick, just casually summoning things just like that. What? And the fact that Laplace is saying ancient, but not all that different from what we have now. Laplace, and again, in this time, before the big cataclysm happens, he's sitting here talking, and he's like, similar to what we have right now. Like, he's like, right now, I could literally put together some sort of summoning right now and summon something. Now, to what extent is the question mark there? He could just be talking about, like, summoning with the capabilities and, then lacking a complexity to just summon from one of the other sides of the world. And not necessarily to another world outside of the six-face world. Again, to, like, our original where Rudius was from, Japan. What? The other WTF here is that, yes, there's, like, still, even though the sea world has collapsed and nothing is inhabiting it, there's still, like, small creatures that are, like, there. Like, there's, like, I guess, like, this little bubble of water that's in the middle of a void bubbling around. There's a fish in it going, please give me food, and it's slowly dying. But either way, it's like, even though it's already collapsed, there's still something there. There's still life there. That's a question mark there. So what do we mean by collapse? When I think collapse, I think like it went to void, or like it just exploded and it's just in like space and it's just done. Or is it just simply that like magma? I don't know. It's weird. At the same time, I recall my first visit to the SeaWorld. Now I'm used to it, but when I first saw fish, I was incredibly excited to think such creatures existed in other worlds. You see, fish have peculiar shapes, don't they?
They can only live in water, and they have such an odd form. You don't think so? You say you can catch fish in the backyard pond? I see. Well, I spent a long time in a world without oceans, but even you would probably think a blue dragon looks strange, wouldn't you? They have a form that only allows them to live in the sky. Lord Dragon God chose not to make the results of teleportation research known to the general public and the dragon folk. Do you know why? No. Out of consideration. Unlike monsters, there's no way to deal with teleportation. If made public, it would only cause unnecessary panic. That's what Lady Dola said. Of course, there are many other reasons as well. Perhaps he foresaw the research wouldn't yield immediate results. If results weren't achieved and casualties increased, the research team would inevitably face harsher scrutiny. True. That would bring suspicion upon them specifically. Why was I not informed? Because you're appointed as one of the 5 Dragon Generals under the premise that you would interact with the other worlds. And they might be able to see something. They might be able to see into his mind or manipulate him in some way. It's not a lack of trust, it's just seeing that they could potentially exploit him in some way. I was shocked. I thought I stood on equal footing as the other 5 Dragon Generals. Yet I alone was kept in the dark about this secret work. That meant, perhaps, even up to this very moment, they feared I might betray them. That's what I thought. Don't make that face. It wasn't because we thought you'd betray us. Then why? And it explains also why he was chosen to do that, not anybody else. Him specifically, because he doesn't know yet. If the research into teleportation were to reveal a culprit behind teleportation incidents or monster appearances, it would hinder you with your work. If the research into teleportation were to reveal the culprit behind teleportation incidents or monsters appearances, what? How? Because he wants them to keep peace. I guess what they're saying here is that if we find out that the demons were the ones that were causing all the problems, then you would start to not talk to them properly. Even if we find out it's them, we want you to keep making peace with them. Maybe? There are things better left unknown. Even back then, I understood that well. Some demons had the ability to read minds after all. Yeah, again. There's no need to be discouraged. I'll explain everything in due time. Lady Dola patted my shoulder and began talking about the research. Each of the Dragon Generals had been assigned research topics. Teleportation, summoning, monsters, barriers. Again, this is something that stems back there. Crystal had been in charge of teleportation research. Lady Dola had inherited that work. She was an expert in both summoning and teleportation. Interesting. Summoning magic calls forth creatures from another world. Conversely, teleportation magic sends creatures to another world. Given this explanation, you must have realized they were fundamentally the same thing. Yep. And we learned that from the mainline series. Creatures, does that mean people cannot be summoned? You can. She stated that plainly. That's exactly why the engineers of other worlds misunderstood. They were assuming that we were using summoning and teleportation to throw the 6 worlds into disarray. In fact, if we wanted to do something like that, it wouldn't be impossible.
It seems implied they were doing this as a precautionary thing, or at least to understand it. But it keeps hinting at the idea of them actually having done it. It's warranted actions against them.
That's why Lord Dragon God completely prohibited the summoning and teleportation of people.
There's the God rule again. I was saying that again. That was that whole thing they brought up at some point, that like there is a rule against it. That the gods made a rule against it. It's right here is where it started. It's so funny seeing this kind of stuff. Yes, Lord Dragon God had banned the summoning of people. It was only natural if a person was summoned from another world and then teleported elsewhere. It would effectively create a manufactured case of someone vanishing without a trace. Thus, the fundamental summoning formulas had multiple restrictions attached to it, preventing the summoning of people. Those restrictions were buried deep within the spell formula, hidden beneath layers upon layers of encryption, turning it into a black box. Something that later on, somebody has to get around. Even now, I have no way of deciphering it. Even if you can use summoning magic, that doesn't mean you can tamper with its roots. Okay, so right here he's saying that even if he can use summoning magic, he's not going to just get around that aspect of it itself. Most likely, the only ones capable of unlocking that black box was Lady Dola herself. Huh. If it was passed on to her, yeah. Not only that, but even the mere existence of teleportation and summoning was kept secret. Do you know why? Because if the means exist, someone will inevitably use them. Exactly. If we dragonfolk believe it is necessary for Lord Dragon God, we would recklessly use it, bearing all consequences on ourselves. I nodded at her words. It was simple. Yeah, he gets like, yeah, I would do the same. Like, yeah, you're preaching to the choir here. If someone got in Lord Dragon God's way, and he, for some reason, could not kill that person himself, then I would do it. Any consequences that followed would be attributed to my personal actions. If taking all the blame meant protecting Lord Dragon God, I would do so without hesitation. That is why Lady Dola said even the other Dragon Generals were not allowed to use summoning or teleportation magic either. Even if she has the opening there, again, if she possibly has the way of getting around that black box.
This sort of gets back to that theory that I had around Szilard and the fact that he would do something if it meant, helping. Conversely, Lady Dola herself had a little knowledge of barrier or magic-related technologies, but she knew they existed. If one could create monsters and teleport them to other worlds, you can create a kind of calculated harassment. Well, that would only happen if the Dragon Generals were ever to defy Lord Dragon God's orders. Of course, none of the 5 Dragon Generals would ever do such a thing. Again, right there, this is speaking later, cementing that there's nothing like that happening. It's despite my weird theories there. However, if it's possible, does that mean teleportation and monsters were being caused by someone? No. Research showed that teleportation incidents and monster appearances occurring in the world were slightly different from those caused by magic. What do you mean? When we use magic, we activate a phenomenon through a magic circle. But the teleportation and monsters appearing in the world show no such traces. Again, that was my original assumption that this is probably not going to be related. It's just going to be, again, the worlds themselves being so broken. They're not created well. And the mana itself is corrupting the beasts and turning them into monsters. They're just now learning about it. Whereas, again, in the mainline series, it's something that's just established. It's just something that happens. The research had progressed. Both teleportation and summoning had become possible. The true nature of the appearances of monsters and vanishings caused by teleportation had also been understood. Then, what is their true nature? It's what we call dragon power. Huh? Lady Dola explained the 6 worlds were filled with a certain power. In the dragon world, it was called dragon power. In the demon world, it was called demon power. Now we call it magic power or mana. But this power existed in all beings that resided in the 6 worlds. People, beasts, fish, birds, dragons alike. And this power was a cause behind the emergence of monsters and teleportation. Again, that was the assumption. I guess they're finally getting a sense of this stuff. And again, this is something they're going to have to figure out. The gods created the worlds, and then they created the gods, and they put it in there. They have to figure this stuff out. They have to figure out what the hell the creator god did. They have to understand it. And they're apparently figuring this out. Again, stuff that's kind of just common knowledge in the mainline series. Way in the future. When a living being absorbed a massive amount of this power, it transforms them into a monster. The bestowed power reconstructs the creature's body into something far more durable. People are no exceptions. Though their outward appearance may not change much, they gain immense strength or special abilities beyond that of ordinary beings. Battle aura, yeah. And again, it's implying there with like the beasts. The beasts themselves are mutating because it's making them stronger. ? Perhaps even my demon eye and the overwhelming strength of the 5 dragon generals could be considered a type of monsterization. Additionally, this power naturally seeks balance across the 6 worlds. If one world experiences a significant loss of power, it will draw in power from the others to compensate, and this absorption doesn't just affect plants and animals. It includes people as well. This results in teleportation. The so-called spirited wave phenomenon. Okay, yeah. If one world experiences a significant loss of power, it will draw power from the other worlds to compensate. And I guess this is what I was assuming was happening with the 6-faced world. It was created to basically create this flow of energy. One is not enough because it's got too much or it doesn't have enough, so I need to make another one that has some, and they'll kind of just borrow from each other. They're just kind of borrowing magic between each other. But it's saying this absorption doesn't just affect plants and animals. It includes people as well. So it's happening with that. When it experiences a significant loss of power, it will draw power from another one to compensate. This absorption doesn't just affect the plants and animals. It's acting like it's pulling energy and people are getting pulled at the same time. So-called spirited wave phenomenon. However, this was as far as we managed to understand. We had identified the cause, but we had yet to determine why these occurrences had increased so drastically after a certain period. Because there's a lot of energy being used, or the worlds themselves are collapsing. Whatever was created here isn't going to hold up very long. Again, it was just kind of patched together. Hopefully it lasts. And it's not. It's been slowly dying. Or again, somebody's using a lot of energy somewhere, and that's causing stuff to get flowing more. The leading theory amongst the researchers was that, at some point, the overall power of the worlds had decreased significantly, leading to imbalances. When worlds began to draw power from one another to compensate, teleportation naturally occurred, and when areas of high power and low power concentration formed within a world, monsters would appear more frequently in the denser regions. That was the hypothesis. For now, it was the most plausible explanation. Again, that sort of lines up. But why had the power of the worlds diminished so drastically in the first place? That remained unknown. Something must have caused it, otherwise it wouldn't have happened. This understanding came only recently, just before the war started. The time to tell you had already passed. but the opportunity never arose. And there was also the possibility that another world had caused it. Laplace, do you understand why Lord Dragon God entrusted you with the negotiations with the other worlds and allowed you to bring foreign engineers into the Dragon World? No, I don't. Lord Dragon God intended to share these findings with all the 6 worlds. Once the research had progressed a little further, he planned to reveal the cause, countermeasures, and precautions to prevent it from happening again. Hearing that, I was deeply moved by Lord Dragon God's greatness. He wasn't just trying to protect the Dragon World. He was trying to save all the worlds. I get this mindset. I really do. It sucks because, again, the moment that somebody figures something out, it causes some sort of rift. It causes a massive problem. But it does make sense, the idea of them wanting to figure out the cause and everything involved before creating some sort of confusion. If we don't have a full understanding, we can't fully properly explain it. Thus, it's not going to help telling anybody else. It's only going to cause issues. The problem is that it was too late. Lord Dragon God is merciful, and yet those fools disgrace him. What hesitation could you possibly have? None. Lord Dragon God had been betrayed by the other worlds. Not only betrayed, misunderstood, accused without cause, and had his most beloved person stolen from him. Of course, he was furious. This war was inevitable. It was the only natural retribution. My doubts vanished. To be honest, I didn't fully understand half of the explanation about summoning at this time, but something inside me had cleared. In the next battle, I resolved to be the first to charge in. As I left the research facility, I saluted Lady Dola and flew off in satisfaction, then renewed my determination for the war against the demons. What a fool I was. If only I had been a little wiser back then. If I understood summoning and teleportation better, I would have asked Lady Dola this. If what you're saying is true, wouldn't destroying the other worlds disrupt the balance of power even further, causing even more teleportation and monster outbreaks? If I had asked that question, perhaps things wouldn't have ended the way they did. Lady Dola, who was always so wise, might have reconsidered, even if just slightly. Yeah, again, the reason why these worlds were created was to create that balance. If you get rid of the worlds, the balance is broken. But again, my question mark early on was they were all existing and things were getting unbalanced. I guess the answer there really is to figure out how to resolve that imbalance and what's causing the imbalance to keep getting worse, rather than destroy the things and disrupt that balance even more. Basically tilt it a little bit rather than throw the damn thing in the trash can. Lady Dola, who was always wise, might have reconsidered even if slightly. But I was just so ignorant and stupid. And so, the war against the demon world began. And that is chapter 18. My gosh. We're getting juicy bits. This ODT volume is starting to get in some juicy bits. And again, I like that a lot of it's really clicking with me, what they've sort of established and what was sort of assumed with how this world functioned. And it's all kind of coming together well. I think overall, with Refugian's creation around the worlds, the six-face world itself, and the balance and the mechanics and everything like that, I do like that there's quite a bit of consistency there. Like, this is stuff that back in the mainline series, when I was sort of considering what they're talking about with how things flowed, it lines up. Now the reveals are actually happening with ODT. It's like, yeah, that kind of fits here. It fits here. This kind of clicks here. Again, a lot of it has to do with how the balance itself was created, how as it's being destroyed, individuals are fleeing to other worlds, and how teleportation and summoning mix in with that. I mean, that's like the one they were first talking about, traveling to other worlds. Yeah, the Barren World. They had to go through the Barren World in order to get the other place. So that checks with what they set up here. Getting into the gems, now we're finally, again, getting into the keys that were created that Orsted eventually will have to get in order to get to the Man God. That's been revealed here. It all kind of clicks here. Now, again, it's sort of giving it finally a name. What does it say? The God Gem? That stuff is interesting, but this is juicy bits, juicy stuff here. And my gosh, I want to read more, but we're running a little bit long, so I'm going to call it here. I'm sorry, chat. I know we want to get into more juicy deets, get into the final moments of this. The next chapter next week will be 19, The Fall of the Demon World. Spoiler, everybody, the Demon World's going to fall. I think at this point, I'm really curious about what ends up happening with the Dragonfolk world. Now, again, we got a sense there based on what was sort of said in the mainline series, but I'm curious if there'll be any extra details in ODT about exactly how that happens. Again, because the assumption there is that pretty much everybody gets wiped out. This isn't like the other ones where it's destroyed and then the human god opens the gate and then everybody rushes in there. Because again, if we look at the current time of the mainline series, there's no Dragonfolks running around. There's not a camp of Dragonfolks. There's not an island of Dragonfolks. there is just the generals. So that leads me to believe that the human god didn't open up the door. There was no door opening. He kept that door closed, presumably because he wanted to wipe out the dragonfolk. And again, the fact that he's pulling everybody from these other sides, it leads me to believe he wanted the dragonfolks to eventually get worn down to take them out. But we'll see what the actual stated happenings happen when we get around to that stuff. But anyways, hey chat, thanks for dropping by for the premiere. Hope you guys enjoyed this Mushoku Monday. As always, your guys' support, your kind words, and all that stuff means a great deal to me. Thank you so much for dropping by. As per usual, the VOD watchers as well. Thank you guys so much for your support. Again, hit the like button before you leave. It helps support the channel even without you having to do any other way. But I greatly appreciate those that do support the channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. Thank you. But until the next Mushoku Monday, y'all take care. I never intended to destroy the Beast Folk world. I never intended to destroy the Beast world. I never intended to destroy the Beast world to this extent. I never intended to destroy the Beast world